Good evening, everyone. We're taking issues and answers on the road tonight, but not too far down the road. We're at Jabo's Coal River Grill in Hazard with U.S. Senator Rand Paul. Senator Paul, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for
Good to
having me.
interview you in person instead of via satellite for a change. Well, obviously we're just a few weeks away from the election now. How do you feel about your chances going into November?
You know, I think particularly in eastern Kentucky, people are very, very upset with the national Democrats, you know, with Hillary Clinton saying she's going to put more coal miners out of business and the coal companies out of business. I just don't think people are ready for anybody who's a friend of Hillary Clinton out here. So I've been a leading opponent of President Obama, a leading opponent of Hillary Clinton on issues of coal regulation. And I think people will recognize that in eastern Kentucky.
Well, I do want to talk to you about the presidential race for a moment. I assume you're going to vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I made a commitment early on. You know, they asked all the candidates to sign a commitment saying you would support the nominee, and I did make that commitment. And I think really, frankly, when you look at issues for Kentucky, coal's a big issue in eastern Kentucky, but it's also a big issue for us in western Kentucky. And Hillary Clinton said she'll put coal miners out of business. Donald Trump said he would repeal the coal regulations. So I think Trump would be better for Kentucky on taxes. Hillary Clinton says she's going to raise taxes. Donald Trump said he'll lower our taxes. So I don't think there's really much of a question if you really are in support of Kentucky jobs that you really can't support Hillary Clinton, and I think Trump is the answer.
Do you have any concerns about a Donald Trump presidency?
Well, of course he was not my first choice. You know, I had other things in mind. But I do think that he's hit a nerve in our country with people worried about jobs going overseas, people worried about, you know, frankly, some of the unfair things that go on with government, worried about the fact that basically the Clintons appear to be in it for themselves, you know, that they appear to have enriched themselves with their government service, that, you know, Bill Clinton made money giving speeches to entities that had to get approval from Hillary Clinton, and that just doesn't look right. You add on top of that, you know, Hillary's pledge to put more coal miners out of business. I just think it's, you know, it's a situation where I think Donald Trump's going to do very well in eastern Kentucky. He did very well in the primary out here, and I think he's going to have a big win in the mountains. I think you're also going to see maybe a transformation because I think people are so fed up with what the Democrats have done to eastern Kentucky. I think they're going to come out in droves to send them a message that we're done. We're done supporting any people, you know, anybody that's a friend of Hillary Clinton. I think people are going to say they're done with it.
Well, I think everyone expects Donald Trump to win Kentucky, but will he win the White House?
You know, I think Kentucky's what I know best, you know, and I think he's going to win Kentucky. I think he'll win eastern Kentucky overall. I don't know what happens nationally. I think it's going to be close. A month ago, everybody said Hillary Clinton was a shoo-in. But, you know, the more we've learned about the emails, the more we've learned about, you know, the mistakes she made as Secretary of State, you know, not providing security for our ambassador in Benghazi. I think the more we learn about that, the more people across the country are dissatisfied with her. The more that it looks like she got special treatment from the FBI and that she got off scot-free. And if it was a soldier here in Kentucky, they would have been court-martialed for what she did. So I think I think the polls are shifting. I think it's going to be very, very close.
Well, what did you think about Trump's debate performance? Most people said Hillary won the debate.
I think he could have done better. I think that, you know, particularly on the issue of the Iraq War, he was debating over what he said on the Howard Stern show like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. He really should have made this point, that Hillary Clinton didn't learn the lesson of the Iraq War. She voted for it. Now she says she's against it, but she didn't really learn the lesson. The lesson was that when we topple secular dictators in the Middle East, you get chaos. And out of that chaos rises radical Islam. So in Syria, Hillary Clinton's the biggest proponent of overthrowing Assad, but I think in doing so, ISIS has grown stronger. Same way with Libya. Hillary was a big supporter of overthrowing Gaddafi, but when we overthrew Gaddafi, we got ISIS taking over Libya. So I don't think that Hillary Clinton's learned that lesson. Had I been in the debate, I would have really gotten her on that point because not only was she for the Iraq War, she did not learn the lesson of the Iraq War.
You skipped the RNC convention. Why?
To be here at home, you know, and I wanted to make sure that I got to every nook and cranny of Kentucky, to every small town, every big town, and we've done it, you know, by being home and particularly spending that week here at home. I've been able to do 110, probably 120 town halls by now, so we really have worked hard to make sure that the voters get a chance to see what I'm about, ask me questions. And I also was able to do some charitable surgery that week. My profession is as an eye surgeon, and I don't get to do it very often, so I still like to stay in practice. And so we've been able to do charity surgery down in Corbin, in Lexington, Bowling Green, Glasgow, Paducah. I'll do some next week in Louisville. And so I think it's important that I be here, but it's also, I think, important that I continue to do one of the things I love, which is doing the charitable eye surgery.
If you had to do it again, would you have run for president?
You know, I think it's a great honor for both me and Kentucky to have run. We don't have many people run. You know, the last person that really had a shot at it was Henry Clay. And so that's a long time. In fact, I sit at Henry Clay's desk in the U.S. Senate. So to me, it was a great honor. It's a great honor to be part of the debate, to stand on the national stage, and even though I didn't win, to be a part of shaping what that debate becomes and shaping the future of the country. I have that same honor, you know, representing Kentucky in the Senate. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be a U.S. Senator. You know, I was a physician in a small town, and to me it's exciting every day that I get to stand up and defend the Constitution or defend the Bill of Rights, you know, in the same place where James Madison was and John Quincy Adams. So to me it's really exciting, and the whole process has been.
Will you run for president again?
Yeah, you know, I don't know. I'd say unlikely, but I think for me it's mostly concentrating on doing my job as a U.S. Senator. My job is to defend Kentucky, but also to defend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and that's a big job, and I'm a big part of that. Kentucky has a big voice because I'm able to become part of the national debate. You know, very few other senators or congressmen are asked to be part of the national debate. On the national programs, we get a voice. Kentucky has, I think, an outsized voice because I've been able to be part of this national debate as opposed to just being a regional person.
Mm-hmm. I had your opponent, Mayor Jim Gray, on the program just a couple of weeks ago. He was criticizing you at the time for refusing to debate him. I know just today you've agreed to a KET forum, but you've declined to participate in a League of Women Voters debate. Why did you decline that one?
Well, we have to make a decision what to do with our time, and I think having a debate is important. I think it's also important to present our ideas directly to the people. So, for example, this morning I was with the Chamber of Commerce in Lexington and spent an hour with them. I think actually, frankly, it was more informative, and I think Gray can do the same thing. Present yourself to a variety of the same venues. But I think sometimes the yelling back and forth and all of that kind of thing doesn't necessarily make us look, you know, look at some of the debates we've had. Have we always been better informed at the end of them than the beginning? But we do think it's important to debate, and we will have a debate coming up right before the election. It'll be on statewide TV, which I think is good, so everybody in every part of the state can see it. And, you know, other than that, we want to make sure that we continue to get out around Kentucky, do town halls, frankly, let the public ask questions. Let them come. When we have a town hall, we let Republicans come, Democrats come, independents, anybody that wants to come and ask questions gets to ask questions.
Yep. Does that bother you that he repeatedly said that you refused to debate him?
I think when people are struggling, they say a lot of things, and some of the things they may regret over time. But we are going to debate, and we're excited about doing it.
Mayor Gray said he wasn't sure if you've ever created a job in your life. Can you give me an example of jobs you've helped create as a U.S. Senator?
Well, I think he's mistaken about, you know, how jobs are created. Jobs are created in the private sector, and government tries to have a level playing field. We try to have the rule of law and have stability and certainty so businesses can create jobs. He's sort of with President Obama. You know, he's sort of the belief you didn't build that. So he wants to make accusations about things, but in reality, he's mistaken about even the very nature of how jobs are created. So for example, Mayor Gray's candidate, Barack Obama, Mayor Gray's candidate, Hillary Clinton, have destroyed 15,000 jobs. So the real question for him, if he is for jobs in Kentucky, why is he for the job-killing coal regulations? Why is he for the job-killing farm regulations? Frankly, why is he for the job-killing bank regulations? Mayor Gray and his candidate, Hillary Clinton, Mayor Gray and his candidate, Barack Obama, have been for all of these regulations. I'm the one standing up and opposing them, so I think he's confused about jobs. But I've also been a small businessman and been involved in the marketplace, met a payroll, had employees, and I think what's best for creating jobs really is having lower taxes, less regulations, and balance the budget. And he's opposed to all of that. So I think, frankly, he'd be terrible for Kentucky. You know, he'd let the war on coal continue. He'd be a part of the war on coal. His candidate is the author of the war on coal. So I think it'd be a disaster if we were to get a candidate that was a friend of Hillary Clinton's.
Now, he also read off a list of things he said you've been against. So bear with me while I go through this list, and you can respond to each one accordingly. Hal Rogers' bill that would invest millions in coal mine reclamation, training assistance for laid-off workers, the miners' pension bill currently in Congress, which we've heard a lot about recently. He says you wanted to cut funding for Federal Highway Administration, voted against the American Jobs Act of 2011 and the Rebuild America Jobs Act.
Well, he's a little bit confused on the issues. There hasn't been probably a louder advocate from Kentucky than anyone in recent history than myself for infrastructure. I proposed several different ways we can have more money for Kentucky for infrastructure without raising taxes, actually. One, let's quit spending it overseas. In fact, we're running a statewide commercial now saying, let's don't build bridges in Afghanistan, let's build them here at home. We've spent $100 billion in Afghanistan building roads and bridges. I say we build that at home. That's a lot of money and a lot of bridges we could build at home. I've also said that foreign aid that we give about $30 billion in foreign aid, basically money to countries, many of whom hate us, many of whom burn our flag. We give these money to these countries, and yet we have needs here at home. I'd have that money. I'd bring that home. I had an amendment to bring home $9 billion to not spend it in the foreign aid account in some of these countries that hate us. And so he has to decide, is he for that? Is he going to support, his senator who is trying to bring that money back to the country or not? With regard to jobs, I co-authored the job plan. I co-authored the Republican job plan. The Democrat plan failed, the Republican plan failed. Neither one passed, but I was a leader in the Senate actually with the jobs plan. Now the difference between a Republican plan and a Democrat plan is Mayor Gray's plan would raise taxes by $450 million. So our plan would actually cut taxes. So it's really a philosophy of government. It's a vision for the country. How do you create jobs? He thinks higher taxes, the war on coal, the war on the family farm, he thinks all of that would create jobs. We think the opposite. We think lower taxes. In fact, you can look at it this way. We have the highest corporate income tax in the whole world, 35%. Does he want it to be higher? That's what his candidate, Hillary Clinton, wants. She wants higher taxes. I think, frankly, if we raise the taxes anymore, American companies will go overseas. We already see this. Burger King reincorporated in Canada a few years ago. Canada's income tax is 15% for businesses. Ours is 35%. We have companies in Kentucky that are competing with companies in Bermuda, have 9%. So we've got to bring our taxes down to compete with the world, and that's a real valid issue where he and I frankly disagree, and where he and I and Hillary Clinton disagree. That I think we should have lower taxes and they want more taxes. I think we should have less regulations. I'd get rid of the war on coal, and they want to enhance that. They want to increase the regulations on coal. So I think there's a huge distinction between us, and obviously these will be good points that we'll bring up when we have the debate.
What about the minor pension bill? What problem do you have with that?
Yeah. I actually support the concept, and I've talked with Hal Rogers about this. This is the concept of, for many, many years, coal companies paid in money like a tax to the government into this reclamation fund. It now has $2 billion in it, much more than it needs to have in it. I'm for giving it back. I'd give it back to the people who paid it. I'd give it back to the communities who paid it. But I also would try to shore up the companies at the same time. The reason the pensions are failing is that Hillary Clinton's war on coal bankrupted the coal companies. So the real question for people who want to demagogue the issue is, are they for eliminating the war on coal at the same time? So I would marry them together. So if we have union miners that their pension is threatened, why don't we help restore it by bringing some of this money, which I favor, but why don't we also get rid of some of the regulations that are killing the coal companies so the coal companies could thrive and help with the pension fund? See, if we don't do anything to help the coal companies and we just throw a bunch of money into the pension plan, we'll be back here in a year or two with the same problem. If there are no functioning coal companies, the pension can't exist. So I do support the concept, but my goal is to try to take that bill and put in regulatory relief for coal companies and also some relief for non-union coal workers. Most of the coal workers that are retired in our state are actually non-union. This plan we're talking about only helps the union workers. So really, to be fair, coal companies have been bankrupted by Hillary Clinton's war on coal. They've been bankrupted, both union and non-union. And I have sympathy for both, but I want to have a good balanced return. I've also considered that maybe some of the reclamation fund could come directly back to people. You know, in Alaska, when they have surplus money, people get it back an individual check. I've actually thought maybe we could send back individual checks to people who live in coal producing counties, because there's really no coal company to give it back. So if the coal company went bankrupt in Eastern Kentucky, let's send a check back to every individual who lives in that county and see if that would help stimulate the economy as well.
But you would vote against the minor pension bill as it stands now?
I want the minor pension bill to be better, but I support the concept.
Mayor Gray says he can work with Donald Trump. Can you work with Hillary Clinton?
You've probably not seen anybody in Washington actually work with the other side more than I have. On the opioid bill, trying to tackle the drug problem, I had an amendment that was added to the bill with Ed Markey, who's a progressive Democrat from Massachusetts. 2 weeks ago, I led the fight not to send more arms to Saudi Arabia. I did that with progressive Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut. I've worked with Ron Wyden on issues of privacy and saying the government shouldn't look at our phone records. So I bet you I may have close to 20 bills that are co-sponsored by Democrats. So I don't know that he's offering something that's not already occurring.
Mayor Gray obviously is for raising the minimum wage. Do you see a time in the near future where you could support that?
Yeah. I want to see wages above the minimum wage. And so I think when we're talking about the starting wage, we're mistaking the whole problem. We really don't want $10 an hour. We want people working for $15 or $20 an hour. So what you have to do to have that is you have to have a robust economy. But if you set the minimum wage above the market wage, so let's say, you know, we're in a restaurant here at Jabo's. Let's say some of the starting workers get $7.25. If we make it $14.25, people say, well, that's great for the workers. But maybe instead of 20 workers, there'll be 10 workers, because the employees will say, or the owners will say, now the family's going to have to do more of the work because we can't afford $14 an hour. So really, it actually causes loss of jobs. And the Congressional Budget Office looked at this and said that if you mandate a raise in the minimum wage, instead of creating wealth for people, you create 500,000 jobs that will be lost. So really, the debate has to be, how do we get the economy growing more like at 3%? Right now, the economy is growing at 1% under President Obama. First thing is, I think we ought to send him back to Chicago. You send him back to Chicago, then I think maybe we get different policies. But those different policies are what are going to create the jobs. Lower taxes, less regulation, you'll get plenty of jobs, and wages will be bid up.
What's your biggest concern about a Hillary Clinton presidency?
I think the regulatory tsunami that will come. We already have had a lot of regulatory onslaught by President Obama. We have $2 trillion worth of regulations a year. I think she's going to continue that. I think she'll continue the war on coal. I mean, she basically boasted to people that she and her policies would put coal miners out of business. And so that concerns me. I don't see how any way in the world, and this is Mayor Gray's ultimate problem. He's a friend of Hillary Clinton. He's a supporter of Barack Obama. How could anybody in Eastern Kentucky possibly consider voting for a guy who's a friend of Hillary Clinton's, who says she's going to bankrupt people out here? And so, no, I hope we send a clear and a resounding message to both the mayor and to Hillary Clinton. She's not good for us. And if she wants to put us out of business, by golly, we're not going to vote for her.
I want to go back to wages for a moment. Governor Bevin just added Kentucky recently to a list of states challenging a new federal rule that will make millions of workers eligible for overtime pay. Do you support that change?
I think that wages should be dictated by the marketplace. The University of Kentucky, all the state universities think that this is going to be such a burden on them that what will happen is we'll actually have less jobs. So let's say right now your salary is $35,000 a year. Now they're going to say that you have to get overtime if you have a $35,000 a year job. Problem is now you're going to have to clock in. So many people have a $35,000 a year job. If you tell your employer, you know what, I've got to take my daughter to the doctor or my son to something during the middle of the day, well, you're getting paid a salary. It's not like you have to give them back any money. But once you go to hourly, and I think it's all the way up to $50,000, that's a lot of people that are going to be punching a clock. For many of us, sort of our first success in life was going from an hourly wage to a salary. People like working for a salary. This is dictating that you become an hourly wage earner again for a lot of people. And I think it'll also, once again, lead to loss of jobs as well. So it's a big mistake.
Senator Mitch McConnell just happens to be in Hazard today, too. Do you think he's done enough as Majority Leader to help Eastern Kentucky and the coal industry in particular?
You know, I think we both fought long and hard for the coal industry, and it hasn't succeeded. And the main reason it hadn't is because President Obama's vetoed everything we've done. Senator McConnell and I were co-authors of a repeal of several of President Obama's regulations, and we passed them. So he was successful in passing them out of the Senate. We passed them in the House, and then they were vetoed by the president. So really, the war on coal rests with Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. It's not Mitch McConnell's fault. It's not my fault. We're the ones actually been fighting against every one of these regulations. We would repeal every one of Obama's regulations on coal, and the other side wants to enhance them.
You're going to be talking with Senator McConnell today about the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act. Tell me about that and what that means.
We've got a big drug problem in Kentucky, and it used to be mostly pills, but now it's kind of morphed from pills into heroin. We have more people dying from heroin than car accidents, which is just startling to most people, because you know how much we talk about safety in cars and deaths in cars, but we have more people dying from heroin than cars, and that's just alarming. So this bill came forward, and it's a bipartisan bill, and it's also an example that a lot of people don't think we ever work together, but this was Republicans and Democrats working together to try to do something. We're not going to see tomorrow the drug addiction problem go away, but I think it will have some help. The particular part that I got added to the bill is that if you are a heroin addict and you can't quit cold turkey, there are medicines that you can take to step off of heroin, and the federal government was limiting how many doctors could see patients to give them replacement treatment. My amendment to the bill actually will expand that access, and we think hundreds of thousands of people will now be eligible to be seen for this replacement treatment. We're hoping that it will do something. The other thing is, if you want to fix drugs, you want to fix the drug problem, jobs is a big part of it. When people are working, they don't have time to use drugs. They're less likely to get overcome by addiction if they're at work. And so we really have to debate what kind of government creates more jobs or allows more jobs to be created. And to me, that's a small constitutional government, balances its budget, and has low taxes and less regulations. And that's really what this election's about. One side wants higher taxes, I want lower taxes. One side wants the war on coal, we want to abolish the war on coal.
I've talked to you about marijuana before. Are you ready to support legalizing marijuana nationwide?
What I'm for is each state to be able to determine, like particularly with medical marijuana. You know, there are some kids that have intractable seizures. Some kids can be on 6 or 7 medicines, all prescription medicines, and they're still not controlled. Some of them have gotten the oil from that plant, from the cannabis plant, and actually had some benefit with their seizures. There are also some people who have incurable disease, AIDS, multiple sclerosis, cancer. I think that, you know, if your mother had cancer, I don't think it's the job of government to tell her that if marijuana helped her with her nausea, that she couldn't do it. So we should treat it more as a sort of a health issue and less as another issue. Do I think marijuana is good for you to smoke and to do every day? No. I think it leads to, like many other things, problems. And so I'm not an advocate at all for the drug, other than that I think we should research and explore it for medical uses.
You still support term limits?
Yep. I'm one of the original co-sponsors on the term limits bill. The senator that has the bill is leaving. I'm going to see if I can become the lead co-sponsor on it. I think it would be good for our country to have more turnover. I kind of laughingly say I've been there, and there's no monopoly on knowledge in Washington. So I think turnover and term limits is a good idea.
Does that mean you wouldn't run for a third term if you won the second term?
I think that if we have term limits, they ought to be the same for everybody. The problem with people saying, oh, why don't you voluntarily promise this, is there are a lot of good people that are for term limits. I'm one of only 9 people for term limits. If I self-limit and leave, then there's nobody left for term limits virtually. So I think really it's important that the law be the same for everybody, but I will continue to advocate for that law.
Donald Trump said yesterday that the U.S. military is depleted and he will expand the nation's armed forces. What say you?
I don't think he's exactly got it right. We spend a lot of money on our military. We spend more on our military than the next 10 countries combined. So United States spending, add up the next 10 countries, and that's what we spend. So we don't spend an insignificant amount on our military. Since 9/11, military spending in real terms has gone up 50%. So I think we have to watch military spending and welfare spending and domestic spending. You got to watch both. And really one of the problems we're $20 trillion in debt is some Republicans want unlimited military spending, some Democrats want unlimited welfare spending, and guess what? They get together and they get all spending to go up. So no, I think we have the strongest military in the world. I think we have the most capable military in the world. We have the most professional military in the world.
What's the biggest issue for Congress to tackle right after the election?
I think the biggest threat to our country is still the debt. You know, we have a $20 trillion debt. We borrow $1 million a minute. We need to do what every American family has to do. We should only spend what comes in. And it's not like we don't have enough government money to do lots of good things. We just need to spend it more at home. We bring in $3 trillion in taxes, but we spend $3.8 trillion. We need to balance that, so we have a balanced budget, but then we need to redirect our resources home. Instead of sending money overseas to countries that hate us, I'd rather improve the roads in eastern Kentucky. I'd rather build schools in eastern Kentucky. I'd rather build bridges in eastern Kentucky and throughout Kentucky, but I'd rather not send that money overseas. And I think if we did that and we kept our taxes low, I think we have a great country, and I think we'd grow like we never have before if we could figure out that it's not more government that we need, it's more freedom.
All right, Senator Paul, always a pleasure. Thank you.
you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Issues and Answers.